Like, subscribe, and share. Airbnb nightmare, escaping a terrifying cabin in the woods. It was the spring of my senior year in college, and the promise of a break was finally within reach. Like many of my peers, I craved an escape from the relentless grind of classes and late-night study sessions. However, unlike my friends who were jetting off to tropical beaches in Mexico, I was stuck on campus, the bills piling up and my savings dwindling. Alive, my girlfriend, sensed my disappointment. Why don't we plan a little getaway? Just the four of us, she suggested one afternoon, a spark of excitement in her eyes. She proposed inviting her best friend, Leah, and her boyfriend, Calvin. It sounded perfect, a chance to relax and create lasting memories before we all went our separate ways after graduation. After a few hours of searching, we stumbled upon a quaint Airbnb tucked away in the woods of Lake County, California. The listing boasted a hot tub, a cozy fireplace, and plenty of space for all of us. The price was shockingly reasonable, almost too good to be true. But the reviews were glowing, and I was ready to throw caution to the wind. We quickly made the reservation, our excitement bubbling over as we imagined the adventures that awaited us. On the day of our trip, we packed up Calvin's Mini Cooper, which, despite its cramped quarters, had a charm of its own. As we drove along the winding roads leading to the cabin, the trees began to loom larger, and the air grew cooler. The landscape changed, becoming more secluded, with each turn taking us further away from the bustling city. Ali and Leah chatted animatedly in the back seat, laughing and reminiscing about old memories, while Calvin kept his focus on the road. I gazed out the window, my heart swelling with anticipation. However, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, I couldn't shake a creeping sense of unease. The woods seemed to close in around us, and the shadows deepened, whispering secrets I was too afraid to uncover. We finally arrived at the cabin just as night fell. The structure loomed before us, a rustic charm tinged with an air of isolation. The lights inside flickered warmly, inviting us to step into its embrace. After a quick tour, we settled into the living room, where the exposed beams and vintage decor made it feel cozy, yet slightly eerie in the dim light. That first night was relaxed. We lit a fire in the fireplace and opened a bottle of wine, settling in for an evening of board games and laughter. As the night wore on, I felt the initial tension dissipate, replaced by the warmth of friendship and camaraderie. But beneath the surface, a whisper of discomfort lingered in my mind. As we played our games, I noticed a strange sensation, a feeling of being watched. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just the atmosphere of the secluded cabin playing tricks on my mind. The girls continued their banter, while Calvin and I exchanged glances, both sensing the underlying tension but unwilling to address it. After a few rounds of games, we finally decided to hit the hot tub. The idea of relaxing in the warmth of the bubbling water under the stars was too tempting to resist. The hot tub was in its own enclosed space, with mesh walls that allowed us to see the woods surrounding us. As we settled into the hot tub, the cool night air contrasted sharply with the heat of the water. We played drinking games, laughter spilling into the night as we shared embarrassing stories from our college years. But just as the fun reached its peak, an unexpected flash of bright light illuminated the storeroom, momentarily blinding us. What was that? Leah exclaimed, her voice tinged with confusion. I jumped out of the hot tub and walked toward the back deck, straining to see what had caused the sudden brightness. The woods were dark, their secrets cloaked in shadows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. My instincts flared, warning me of an unseen presence lurking just out of sight. Guys, I think I hear something, I called back to the others. I listened closely, trying to discern the source of the strange sounds that had begun to echo through the trees. It started with faint clicking noises, followed by an eerie whistling that seemed to drift through the air from multiple directions. My heart began to race as I returned to the hot tub, urgency growing in my chest. "We should probably head inside," I suggested, glancing around nervously. As soon as I said it, Calvin's phone rang and he answered, trying to make sense of the strange sounds as we all huddled together. Just then, we heard a loud bang against the front door, startling us. "Go inside, now," I shouted, and we scrambled out of the hot tub, the laughter replaced by a heavy sense of dread. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere turned tense as the banging continued. I grabbed the largest kitchen knife, my instincts kicking in as I prepared to defend my friends. "We need to barricade the doors," I yelled, my voice rising above the chaos. Calvin dialed the police, his face pale as he relayed the situation. I could see the fear in Eli and Leah's eyes, mirroring the anxiety that coursed through me. "What if it's just a prank?" Calvin suggested weakly, but we all knew this felt different. Just as we began to fortify the doors, the front window shattered, the sound of glass raining down around us. A stone had been thrown through, and attached to it was a note that read, "Go away. You shouldn't be here." Panic surged through us as we realized this was no harmless prank. The stakes had escalated, and our cozy getaway had transformed into a nightmare. "Upstairs, we need to get out of sight," I shouted, leading the charge as we hurried to the second floor. Once in the bedroom, we locked the door, hearts pounding as we pressed our ears against the walls, listening for any sounds from below. The silence was deafening, a thick fog of tension hanging over us. I felt completely helpless, my instincts screaming that we were in serious danger. As we waited, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. The darkness pressed in around us, and every creak of the floorboard sent shivers down my spine. We exchanged nervous glances, uncertainty hanging heavy in the air. "Should we try to escape?" Leah whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, weighing our options. "If we can make it to the car, we might be able to drive out of here." Just then, we heard footsteps on the stairs. My heart raced as I held the knife tightly, preparing for the worst. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom door, and I could hear muffled voices, indistinct but full of malice. "Stay quiet," I whispered, urging my friends to hold their breath. The door rattled slightly, and I pressed my back against it, ready to push it closed if necessary. The voices grew louder, and I could make out snippets of laughter, taunting, mocking laughter that sent chills racing down my spine. Suddenly, we heard the sound of my Uncle Lucian's voice. "It's us, are you okay?" he called from the other side of the door. Relief washed over me, and I opened the door cautiously. Lucian and my dad rushed in, guns drawn, eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. "What the hell is going on?" Lucian asked, concern etched on his face. I quickly recounted everything, the noises, the banging, the note. They listened intently, their expressions growing darker with each detail. "We need to get everyone out of here," Ged said, his voice steady. "We'll call the police again and secure the area." Just as they were about to leave the room, we heard another loud crash from downstairs, followed by shouting. "Stay here," Lucian commanded, and the adults rushed out, weapons ready. The four of us huddled together, fear coursing through our veins as we waited for the sound of their return. Minutes felt like hours, and the tension in the room was suffocating. Finally, Lucian and my dad returned, their expressions grim. "We didn't see anyone," Dad said, frustration evident in his voice. "But we need to leave now." "What about the police?" I asked, panic creeping in again. "They're on their way," Lucian assured us, but the uncertainty loomed heavy in the air. We gathered our belongings in a flurry, adrenaline propelling us as we made our way downstairs. The cabin felt eerily quiet, the warmth of the fire replaced by an ominous chill. As we stepped outside, the cold air hit us like a slap, grounding me in reality. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as we rushed toward the cars, the headlights casting long shadows across the snow. Just as we reached the vehicles, a figure darted out from behind a tree, and I froze, my blood running cold. Get in, Lucian shouted, pushing us toward the cars as we scrambled for safety. I could see the shadowy figure advancing, moving quickly through the darkness. I felt a surge of panic as I scrambled into the passenger seat, my heart racing. Calvin jumped into the driver's seat, and before I knew it, we were speeding down the winding road, the cabin disappearing in the rearview mirror. The ride was filled with frantic breaths and adrenaline-fueled silence. We drove for what felt like hours, the darkness enveloping us like a thick blanket. As we finally reached the nearest town, we pulled into a gas station, the harsh fluorescent lights illuminating our faces. Inside, we gathered ourselves, trying to process what had just happened. We recounted the events, each detail surfacing like a bad dream we couldn't shake off. "I can't believe this happened," Eli said, her voice shaky. "What if they find us?" "We'll be safe here," Lucian reassured us, but I could see the worrying etched in his expression. We decided to wait until the police arrived, anxious to report the incident and ensure that we were truly safe. But even as we stood in the gas station, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The police arrived shortly after, taking our statements and asking questions. I could see the skepticism in their eyes as they listened to our story, but they assured us that they would investigate the cabin and the area thoroughly. The following morning, we received a call from the police. They had searched the cabin but found no signs of intrusion. The only thing they discovered was the shattered window, with the note still taped to the rock. It felt surreal, as if we had stepped into a horror movie that had inexplicably blurred the lines of reality. With no leads and no clear answers, we made the decision to head back home, the memories of the cabin lingering like a dark cloud. The experience had changed us, leaving a mark that would be hard to erase. In the weeks that followed, I found it difficult to shake the fear that had taken root within me. I attended therapy sessions, seeking to process the trauma we had experienced. My therapist encouraged me to confront my feelings of vulnerability and fear, to understand that while we had faced a terrifying situation, we had emerged together. As the seasons changed and spring turned into summer, I began to heal. I reconnected with Eli, Calvin, and Leah, sharing our thoughts and feelings about that night. We laughed and cried together, finding comfort in one another's presence. We decided to plan another trip, this time a camping excursion with friends who had not been present during the Airbnb terror. We chose a more populated location, where the sounds of nature would drown out any lingering fears. With every hike and campfire, I felt a renewed sense of freedom. The shadows of that night began to fade, replaced by the warmth of friendship and shared experiences. I learned that while fear could be paralyzing, it could also be a catalyst for strength and resilience. As I look back on that fateful trip to the cabin, I realize it shaped me in ways I couldn't have imagined. It taught me the importance of trust, the strength of friendship, and the necessity of confronting fear head-on. The experience became a part of my story, woven into the fabric of who I am. Though I would always carry the memories of that night, I learned to embrace the lessons it taught me. I found solace in the beauty of nature, in the bonds forged through adversity. And while the darkness may always linger, I knew that together we could face any challenge that lay ahead.